It's the tips and tricks that you pick up on over the years as a mechanic that can drastically increase the speed and efficiency of a repair. And oftentimes, these aren't mentioned in service manuals. So it's only speaking to and learning from other mechanics that you'll therefore come across them. In today's short video, I'm going to share 5 of the most useful tips I've picked up over the years, and then one bonus one if you stick around until the end. Side cutters are some of the most common tools that we use around the workshop to shorten wire, cables, linkages, bolts, pins, and so many other applications. However, the excess that's trimmed off will inevitably fly across the room and land exactly where you don't want it. Either in an engine bay, on the floor where it can cause a puncture, or worst of all, into your eyes. Therefore, a great tip is to fill that void of the cutters with silicone, let it cure for 24 hours, and then slice between the two jaws. And this will therefore capture anything that you're cutting off. It will stop it from flying across the room and eliminating any problems that may occur because of it. Besides cleaning and preparing the surfaces really well, I recommend that you use a neutral cure silicone. This avoids rust forming from the acetic carriers found in many different types of sealants, and it will ensure you've got a strong, long-lasting bond. Many tools come with a rust preventative coating, which can also affect adhesion, so make sure that you use a wire brush or a wire wheel to remove it. I use 3-Bond 1215 for all of my engine rebuilds. It's a neutral cure sealant, therefore it's perfect for this application, and I've put a link in the description below if you want to buy yourself a tube. Multi-stranded cables are some of the most common you'll come across on small engines. They're used on everything from throttle cables, bales, choke linkages, braking systems, and much more. And although they offer the advantage of flexibility that solid wire doesn't, they do have their drawbacks too. When sectioned to length, you're left with an end that will inevitably unwind and fray over time. And when you have to do adjustments or repairs, it oftentimes requires you to remove the cable from the stop and make it impossible to therefore get it back in after you've finished. Sometimes you can get away by manually twisting those wires back together, but oftentimes it doesn't work, and it can be very frustrating as well. And ultimately, it leaves you with just replacing the cable, but actually that's not necessary. Instead, using a cable tie, tighten it onto the cable above the frayed end, and then twist it in the direction that the strands want to go whilst drawing it down. This way you can quickly, evenly and effectively retwist them, allowing for refitment and adjustment where necessary. CA glue is an incredibly handy adhesive. It's gasoline resistant, it cures very quickly, and it's very affordable too. However, they're not known as being good gap fillers. They can sag and drip, and they can be weak under certain forces too. Therefore, add a small amount of bicarbonate of soda to the area that you want to repair first, and then add the CA glue on top of that. The bicarbonate of soda acts as an accelerator, as well as a reinforcing matrix for the glue, giving you a stronger, more resilient bond. And I've found that this works best with the thin CA glues rather than the thicker ones, which tend to just sit on top of the bicarbonate of soda. They don't penetrate, and they take much longer to cure as well. And you can actually buy kits that do exactly the same thing, but unsurprisingly they're expensive and they're really not necessary. Accessing hard to reach hardware can be tricky enough even when you're using the right tool for the job. A universal joint is fantastic for this, but after some use the knuckle does loosen up and it tends to flop around with the weight of the socket. This makes it incredibly frustrating and sometimes even impossible to locate it onto the bolt that you want. Therefore, adding a small O-ring to the knuckle allows you to be able to position the adapter at any angle that you want while avoiding it from flopping around in use. Choosing too thick of an O-ring will constantly pop off. It can limit the adapter's range of motion and becomes as frustrating as the loose universal adapter did in the beginning. One essential diagnostic procedure on any four-stroke engine is a leak down test. This is where air is pumped into the engine, allowing you to determine where compression loss may be occurring. Finding where that leak is occurring, though, can be incredibly tricky, especially if it's only a very slight leak. Your hearing may not be as good as it used to be, or access to a certain area is limited. In instances like this, I like to use a long incense stick. By doing so, you're able to reach the areas that might otherwise be inaccessible. You can get considerable flow of smoke and therefore a great visual reference, even to the slightest of air movements. They're cheap to buy, easily accessible, and of course they smell amazing too. Now, not that brand makes any difference here, grab whatever incense you like, but it's hard to beat, at least in my opinion, the smell of Hem's coconut incense, and therefore I've put a link in the description below if you want to try some. If you've made it this far, I've got one more bonus tip for you that will make your rebuilds go so much smoother. It can be very easy to lose hardware when rebuilding an engine, or at the very least, forgetting which orientation parts come off and therefore go back on. Therefore, my favourite method is to replace the hardware either back on to the part that you've removed or in the correct order and orientation that it came off, and then simply secure it in place with a cable tie. This takes all the guesswork out, saves time having to find that photo that you've likely deleted or searching through a parts list. And it won't fall off like masking tape can. It doesn't matter how greasy or oily that part is. And you can even clean everything with those cable ties still in place. And when you're ready for reassembly, you can either nip them off, or better yet, use a pick and lift up the locking tab to reuse them. So far, which one's your favourite? And to recap, we had silicone in the side cutters to stop bits flying around, retwisting cables with a cable tie, reinforcing CA glue with bicarbonate of soda, tightening loose adapters with the O-rings, incense for the leak detection, and finally maintaining orientation and location of parts on a repair. And if you found these handy, I've got one more for you that's to stop silicone curing in the tube once it's been opened. It will save you a lot of money, frustration, and I've got that video on how to do so right up here for you next. Regardless of the engines that you're repairing, you're going to come across the need to use gasket makers and sealants. And finding that they've cured in the tube, especially when they're nearly full, is not only incredibly inconvenient, but when some of them cost up to $60 per tube, it's incredibly expensive too. I'll show you a way to ensure they never cure in the tube again,